and dying in your beds many years from now, would you be willing to trade all the days from this day to that for one chance, just one chance, to come back here and tell our enemies that they may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom?
And welcome to Anti-Tyranny News Radio here on UCY.tv. Thank you for joining me this evening. We'll kind of start off with this whole Brussels attack over in Belgium. We kind of had talked about this a little bit about the areas in Europe where they call them no-go zones. The police don't even like going there. You had a 60 Minutes crew attacked in one of these no-go areas. And even though there has been a lot of problems and no assimilation into those European countries, the people in charge have been like, yeah, we're still keeping our borders open. And we said that, you know, this is being done for a reason. You don't do something like this, and I don't believe them to be that naive or ignorant to not know that this stuff is going to happen. What the goal, I think, is just disruption. And if you see what a lot of leaders are trying to come out and say is, you know, we as a world need to come together. Maybe the people of that country need to secure their homes. Something they wouldn't want to talk about, because then it would have to point out how many of these countries over in Europe you are not secure in your own home. And you don't have a right to defend yourself with a weapon. Now, I'm not sure the exact laws in Belgium, but I'm sure that it's harder to protect yourself. And then you have these open borders where you literally had highways filled with immigrants just walking in. You think some of them might have firearms? Possibility, definitely, when terrorist groups have said that they are using that as an opportunity to get their cells in these countries. But a lot of it, too, is to wage more war, disruption, more control mechanisms put in place, biometrics. You know, it will be a snowball effect that they, in a way, created this false flag by knowingly putting the country in these positions when they let people just walk down the highways and come into the country and not be tracked or traced, and who even knows who they are, where they came from, fake passports. And they go, yep, just keep letting them in. And it's not that I have something against right to travel, but they're purposely doing this to make you feel insecure so that you can go to your knees and ask them for help. And again, they also wouldn't mind starting some more wars, get more resources. I'm going to play this Ron Paul Liberty Report. Brussels attack back to Iraq. What would Reagan do? Then I'm going to tell you what I think the best thing for everyone would be.
Thank you, everybody, for tuning in to the Liberty Report. With me today as co-host is Daniel McAdams. And Daniel, it's good to see you.
Good to see you, Dr. Paul.
Very good. There's lots of things in the news this weekend and even last night dealing with foreign policy. Of course, we had a little discussion about what was going on in Cuba and trying to put a positive spin on that and hoping and crossing our fingers. But this is quite a bit different because this is a lot more stirring up problems, seems to be aggravating the situation, and it involves us in the Middle East once again. At the same time, the administration seems to be wanting to calm things down and have better relationships with a former communist, currently communistic country like Cuba. But anyway, several things have happened. You know, on the weekend, there were 2 Marines killed, and they were killed in Iraq. And immediately, you know, the announcement came: more troops, more troops, more troops. Of course, the neocons take the position, well, we should have never left, and we can talk about that in a minute about whether they should have never left, and is that all Obama's fault. But then last night we had this major event in Brussels, and it looks like almost 36 individuals have been killed by a terrorist attack, assumed to be, you know, radical Islamists that came in. They're angry, and everybody's now very hysterical about it. But even before the attack in Brussels, you know, the clamor became very clear: send more troops, send more troops. And even the leading Republican candidate, I forget his name, he says 30,000 will do, but maybe 20,000. And he's the person that's coming across, and he's even being accused of being an isolationist. So he's an isolation because he only wants 20 to 30, and the neocons wanted to leave 200,000 there. So anyway, it looks like escalation over there. I think they're missing the point, and they don't see the connection with the bombing with troop deployments. But it looks like the answer to violence and people's anger at us is send over more troops to create more violence and solidify our occupation of these countries, which has been a total failure.
Sure, and you know, we have had a creeping increase of troops in Iraq and in Syria. And in Syria, of course, it's against international law for the U.S. to have troops there, but that doesn't bother us when it's us. But it's also very uncomfortable with Iraq because, on the one hand, we gave Iraq its sovereignty, and on the other hand, we're putting troops in there without telling them, and they're a little bit annoyed about it. The insertion of these 200 Marines was for some sort of a combat role against ISIS, partnering with local Iraqi troops and other troops supposedly in northern Iraq. And but the interesting, I was just saying, the Iraqi Military Joint Operations Command said there's no credibility to rumors about the deployment of American fighting troops in certain sites in Baghdad and elsewhere. So they're not even admitting that they're there. So there's a big disconnect between the sovereign government of Iraq and what the U.S. administration is doing.
Yeah, we're getting ready. Actually, I think we have 3,700, and there was to be no troops on the ground deal. And we have special forces and CIA agents all over the place. And we never, left the Baghdad embassy. I'm sure we have plenty of personnel in that embassy. So we're very, very much involved. So this pretense that in 2011 we left. But there is a bit of misunderstanding about us leaving because the neocons and the Republicans use this against Obama and say it's all Obama's fault. He has a lot of faults, but Republicans deserve a little bit of blame too. So the 2011 evacuation, where we did take out a lot of troops, it was a consequence of a Bush policy. Isn't this true?
Well, President Bush was trying to renegotiate a new status of forces agreement with the Iraqi government. And under the existing status of forces agreement, U.S. troops were completely immune from prosecution for breaking Iraqi law. The Iraqis, now that they'd had their sovereignty, had also had enough of this impunity. There have been a lot of abuses by U.S. troops over there. And so that's the one sticking point, and the U.S. refused to budge. So because they couldn't reach agreement, the Bush administration and the then Maliki government in Iraq, the U.S. was forced, simply because the contract ran out, was forced to remove the troops.
Well, they didn't admit, I think, like you said, that we had that base there that was being targeted and where the Marines were killed. But they said some of this stuff is so ironic. When our government was confronted about this military base, this secret military base that the Iraqi government doesn't know about, and the American people don't know about, and then they get trapped, and they said, well, first they argued it was a lucky strike. It had nothing to do with a military target. Then we find out it really was. So our government comes back and said, oh, yeah, it is a base. But we were planning on telling the American people about it and revealing that this base was actually there next week. So that sounds pretty typical of how governments operate in revealing the truth to the people.
Yeah, a lot of contempt for the people. But, you mentioned 3,700. I've seen a figure now that over 5,000 U.S. troops are in Iraq. More are coming, as you mentioned, now as a result of this. But also in Peter Van Buren, we featured an article of his on our website. He pointed out that the number of contractors is increasing radically, much more than troops. As of January, 2,028 military contractors, U.S. military contractors, and 5,800 State Department contractors operating in Iraq. So you are creeping up with U.S. personnel in Iraq. It's a sort of a slow leak.
And when there's casualties with contractors, they're not included with the military casualties. So when I talk about how many people died in our wars since 2003, since we went back into the area, they say 4,000 here, 2,000 here, 6,000 or 7,000. But I always use the term more than 10,000, because if you add up all Americans, just because we hired them out as hired guns, and they go over there and do the things the military is supposed to do, they're still Americans involved in our foreign policy, and they were killed over there. So it's a little bit more than they will admit to. But I think that the one other thing that they don't recognize is that what we do, we had a lot of troops there, and we won the war and gave the security to the Iraqis and made the country worse than ever. And then we talk about this tokenism, no boots on the ground, but a little bit here, and now more and more. But they have no evidence that this can be helpful. Why do they expect this is to happen? Because the conditions are worse than they were before. If truly the need for national security was to get rid of Saddam Hussein, we'd go in, we'd declare war, we'd get rid of Saddam Hussein, and we would occupy the country, and that would be it. But that wasn't to come about, because it's too complex, it's too internationalistic, and then the country breaks up, and they end up. So if we couldn't do it with hundreds of thousands of troops and years after years, how in the world do they expect to have a favorable outcome? Especially if you ever are tempted to believe that maybe our occupation and the violence that we create has something to do with the retaliation by terrorists, and one of the recruiting tools that they use to get people to act more radically than they otherwise would.
Of course, and the illogic of the whole situation is, if the original U.S. invasion of Iraq in 2003 under false pretenses everyone knew was a lie, if that was very fundamental in creating what became ISIS, then how we're going back in a limited way, eliminate ISIS. If force creates ISIS, how can more force eliminate? It doesn't make any sense. If anything, as you point out, we're providing an excellent recruiting tool. They're coming back. You better join us.
See, the foreign policy in this country is so well controlled by one element, that is world empire and occupation, that any suggestion of that is just, it's blasphemy, it's treasonous to suggest that maybe it's a reaction to a bad policy in this country. You blame all Americans for that. No, I blame those people who control our foreign policy, and they control it in both parties. That's why I get a lot less excited about arguing who exactly is going to be the next president, because, the dark state, the black state, are capable. But there's a hidden government, the shadow government. They have so much power and control. They can't control the CIA, and if they want to create an event, they will, and they can rouse up the people. And even now, the people want something done. They said the fact that this has occurred is probably going to boost Trump, because he wants to be the tough guy and send in 30,000 to take care of them. So the people, if they're scared, they will react. And even though there's still strong sentiment in this country, they don't want boots on the ground. They don't want to see more Americans killed. The American people feel that way. And yet here we go pursuing it once again.
And, the Europeans may not want to face this either, but the fact is they have blindly followed Washington's foreign policy in the Middle East. Yeah. They've been fundamentally involved in the attempted overthrow of the Syrian government. They were fundamentally involved in the Libya fiasco. The Libya fiasco was the prime recruiting ground for ISIS and Al-Qaeda, and the proof is in the pudding. They're there now running things, essentially, at least in large parts of Libya. So the Europeans have tagged along with the U.S. in a very aggressive interventionist foreign policy in the Middle East, while at the same time European leaders have flung the doors of Europe open to anyone who can manage to get there. We saw tens and thousands, hundreds of thousands of young men coming in, being welcomed in open arms without being checked at all. And then they're scratching their heads. How is it possible that you've ruined my homeland? I'm here and now I'm angry that something doesn't happen here. So I think there's a fundamental crisis in Europe now that will be fascinating to watch. We talked about the rise of parties like the Alternative for Germany, Fidesz in Hungary, which is a party that is in control and is more dedicated to guarding the borders, keeping people out who you can't check. This is a real groundswell, and I think what happened today in Brussels is going to give a huge shot in the arm to the Brexit, Boris Johnson and George Galloway, who want to lead the fight to get the UK out of EU. This is going to be a shot in the arm to the German Eurosceptics. I think it's going to be a fundamental shift.
I agree with that, and I hope it comes quicker rather than too slowly, because it needs to move along, and the message has to be loud and clear that the policies are changing. But, on our little tease on our announcement for this program is what would Reagan do? And I would think that many Republicans would say, well, yeah, that's it. What Reagan do? Because he stood up to the Russians or the Soviets, and he brought down the wall and all these things. He's a tough guy. But I think we can learn a lesson on what Reagan did in Lebanon. The Lebanese War, the Israelis invaded Lebanon. And then we got involved, and there were Christian elements in Lebanon that needed protected. And Reagan justified going in there, and we had a Marines barrack, and a suicide terrorist came in and bombed the barracks, and 241 Marines were killed. Now, Reagan had a choice. He could say, well, we can't put up with this. We got to be tough. We're sending in 100,000 troops, and we're going to conquer this land and make sure they obey us. It's time for us to take over. Like, it's time to take over Syria. It's time to take over Iraq. It's time to take over Afghanistan. But Reagan did not do this. Matter of fact, he even talked about this in his memoirs when he says, time to back off. The politics of this region is totally irrational. I made a mistake. And if I had not made this mistake, those Marines would still be alive today. So he came out. He did not aggravate the situation. And then subsequently, over the years, we read about Robert Pape and his examination and finds out the most important reason to understand suicide terrorism statistically has very, very little to do with religion, which shocked me when I read his book. And it has to do, the issue is occupation, and it occurs even in countries that have no Muslims in it. And that is a lesson that is not learned. Matter of fact, you're un-American if you suggest it, and you have to be macho, you have to be tough, you have to send in more troops, and if the people aren't ready for it, you have to have an incident. You have to have a ship blown up to help start wars like World War I and Spanish-American War. You have to have major problems to galvanize the American people. And that's why, there will be either an accident or a false flag come up if we really want to go back in. And this is not going to work, sending a couple more troops in there and think they can secure Iraq, dealing with the Kurds, dealing with Shia and the Sunnis, and dealing with the Iranians, and dealing with another element that we're not even allowed to talk about is Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia, they're pretty good friends of ours, and we tend to help them. They're close allies. And then we go down there and we say, well, we have to lecture these Cubans. They don't have perfect human rights down there. Why don't we send you Cubans over and study the human rights of Saudi Arabia, because they're our best friends. But this just goes over them. The media never asks the questions about that because, Saudi Arabia, they might cut off our oil or something like that, which would do good for a lot of people now since oil prices are so low.
It's funny. That's such a great Reagan story, and this is for all the neocon lionizing of Reagan, and this is the one chapter of Reagan's that we think is good. This is the one thing you'll never hear them mention.
Right. And Reagan, in comparison to many others, was very good. But we have to remember, too, that he dropped a bomb or two on Libya. So this has been going on. Once again, it's back to philosophy, the philosophy of our country, what liberty is all about, what our Constitution says, what are our moral responsibilities. But they put this in light that we should be involved for moral reasons. We have to go and occupy because there's some imperfections in this country. That's like arguing that individuals have their imperfections. What they do is they drink alcohol and gamble and do all these things, and we have to, teach them better morality. So it's the same thing when we assume we can do that. Yes, many would be well-intentioned to go over there, but right now the American people are very skeptical of this. They don't want the troops on the ground, but they're still very skittish about backing away because people are allowed to be killed. The only thing that will reverse this is when the American people wake up and realize that this is retaliation, this has to do with blowback, this has to do with unintended consequences of us interference. The founders were right. Stay out of entangling alliances. Don't become the world policeman. Don't invade other countries, and have trade with people and have discourse with people and travel back and forth. This is much better. It's been much better with China since that occurred. And just think we lost the war in Vietnam, and just think now we can travel to Vietnam at our pleasure and have straight through flights to Vietnam. And it's going to be much better with Cuba. After all those years of worthless sanctions that were put on, and we had tried to own Cuba, for 100 years or so after the Spanish-American War. So the American people need to know the truth that the founders were correct, and that non-interventionism is going to be defended on a moral principle, as all causes of liberty can be defended on. But people are too easy to say, yes, we agree. We love our liberty. We want our liberty, but Ron, you just don't understand. You have to sacrifice some liberty in order to be secure. And I say to that, baloney. You don't have to sacrifice any liberty to be secure. You'll have more security if you just defend liberty. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today to the Liberty Report, and please come back soon.
Ron Paul Liberty Report, Ron Paul Liberty Report on YouTube, and RonPaulLibertyReport.com. Check them out. Subscribe. Now, one of the other problems that really didn't get pointed out in this is the right to self-defense. And why that's important in this whole thing is you have ISIS running around with weapons. The people that don't want to be associated with ISIS don't have weapons. Well, where do we play a part? Well, a lot of the weapons came from us. 2, occupation by a foreign force would also deter people that don't want to be involved in the violence not to have a weapon. That way they're not associated with the bad guy. Now, there are exceptions like the Kurds, but then we have our other allies, Turkey, going after the Kurds. Again, entangling alliances. You know, something founding fathers warned us about. The problem is when we're involved militarily, it takes the ability for the everyday person in that country to defend themselves. And that is one of the biggest deterrents from terrorists. Again, occupation only kind of, empowers them, makes people, upset that they're being occupied and told what to do by a foreign government, and they retaliate. If you don't, realize, hey, people will do that when it comes to their own governments, why wouldn't you think they would do it when it's a foreign government? And, it goes back to, some of the videos put out by some of the super PACs for Ron Paul, talking about what if, China built bases here and they patrolled the streets, and, what would you do? Okay, I want to get into this one clip. Give me a second, though. Okay. Now, this was put out 5 days ago. Christopher Green, AMTV, Donald Trump GOP broker convention conspiracy. And we'll get into some of this election news. He does have a short video that he put out today, driving video, what you need to know about the Brussels, Belgium terror attack. Go check that out, too. But let's go ahead and get into some election, and this is the Donald Trump brokered convention conspiracy from AMTV Christopher Green.
Visit our sponsor, Point Zero Energy, right now. Solar backup you can count on. Check out their off-grid portable solar generators and complete do-it-yourself solar panel kits. The HomeGrid 5000 HD provides heavy-duty, portable power to back up your entire home in the event of an emergency or blackout. Ideal for running several large appliances at once, such as refrigerators, freezers, high-surge appliances, and cooktops. Hard-hitting with 5,000 continuous watts and 20,000 surge watts of clean, pure sine wave power. For limited time only, get a free EMP back with the purchase of any midsize or heavy-duty portable solar generator. Built for a variety of emergency situations, the HomeGrid 5000 HD is small enough to make it easily portable for quick evacuation, yet can be expandable and tied into an existing solar array and battery bank, giving you complete off-grid power when you need it most. Visit Point Zero Energy today at pointzeroenergy.com. Click the link below right now. Hey, everybody. I'm Christopher Green, and you're tuning in AMTV Alternative Media Television. It is Thursday, March 17th, 2016. Today's video, I'm going to talk about Donald Trump brokered convention conspiracy or conspiracy theory. There's a number of layers here. Now, this is something I even explored in the very beginning, put it out there that there's a possibility that Donald Trump's going to run independent. He's still working for the New World Order paradigm. After all, he donated to the Clintons' campaign in the past. And this is all one big ruse to basically steal the election for Hillary Rodham Clinton in 2016. I actually never really believed that to be the case at all, though we see a lot of it kind of in the atmosphere right now. I really think it's the intention of the Clintonista clan to make you believe that. In fact, I think they kind of put out that rumor. They want you to believe that Donald Trump isn't for real. So there's a conspiracy there. Now, in terms of donating financially to the Clintons, honestly, I say big deal. Donald Trump is a businessman. He donates, like he says, to everybody. Okay, you've got to play the game to win the game. There's a reason Donald Trump's in the position that he is in today, and people like Rand Paul aren't. I like Rand Paul, like his constitutional principles. I like his take on surveillance, all those state issues, better than I like Donald Trump's viewpoint. But the bottom line is Rand Paul isn't in the race because he doesn't know how to play the game, and Donald Trump does. So I see that as a non-issue. And instinctually, from my gut, from the very beginning, and I was one of the first pundits to really mention this or put it out there, I just felt wholeheartedly, organically, that Donald Trump was for real. And I still believe that to this day because, again, I truly believe what I see with my eyes, actions speak louder than words. Now, the flip side of this is that the GOP convention, the Republican Party, this is where I think the actual real conspiracy is. And it's not a theory. The GOP party wants to take out Donald Trump. It's, for example, why I think people like John Kasich are still running. Now, this guy should drop out. Even Glenn Beck said the other day, which I think is kind of funny. It's almost uncharacteristic of Beck, said something like, "You son of a bitch, Kasich."
Kasich, excuse my language, but you son of a bitch.
Because obviously he backs Ted Cruz. And Glenn Beck, who's constantly at war with Alex Jones, and Alex Jones constantly at war with Glenn Beck. You know, they bicker at each other. Alex Jones supports Trump. Trump's been on Alex Jones's show. I don't think Trump has been on Glenn Beck's show. And then Glenn Beck endorses Ted Cruz. So you got this war. You even have this political media war occurring among the media pundits themselves, in addition to the cast of characters that are running against each other. So Kasich, I really believe, is a part of this GOP New World Order establishment. Now, he won in Ohio recently, but that's about the only state. So he's basically effing, I'll say it politically correctly, he's effing Donald Trump and effing Ted Cruz right now. Because it's really a two-pony race right now. We've got Donald Trump and Ted Cruz. Now, arguably, Ted Cruz should also drop out, but I could still give it to him that, look, he can carry this on for a little while longer, although Donald Trump has a commanding lead. And I think it likely, very possible, and I'm hopeful of this, that he'll actually take the delegate count with the majority win. I think he needs like 1,237 or something. Correct me if I'm wrong. It's different on the GOP side as it is from the Democratic Party. I think they need like twice the amount of delegates or whatnot on the Democratic side. So there is a real conspiracy, I believe, and it's not a theory, that the GOP party, the media establishment, the political establishment, the religious establishment, the New World Order establishment, all the countries involved are working against Donald Trump. And I think they fully intend to steal the election away from him. It's exactly why we had the former Speaker of the House, John Boehner, Mr. Boner, endorse Paul Ryan, a guy who literally isn't even running for president. It's why Mitt Romney came out against Trump recently and has kind of positioned himself maybe to run. Paul Ryan, again, now the new House, Speaker of the House, not categorically declining the statement that he will, in fact, run. Again, he said that he wouldn't run for Speaker, and then he ended up running, and now he's our Speaker. Okay, so you can't trust a single thing that these people have to say. Now, this is a convoluted web. This is a convoluted world of delegates and super delegates. It differs by state. It differs by party. So Trump needs this majority on the first count, I believe it is, and I think it's like 1237 or something, correct me if I'm wrong, something in that ballpark, in order for the GOP party really to cement him as that nominated candidate or the nominee. But I think where the conspiracy is, and it's not a theory, is they're going to try to prevent him from getting and hitting that number, that majority count, where he falls just short. Even Donald Trump's talked about this. Maybe it's 30 delegates. Maybe it's 100 delegates. Then, according to the rules, because again, you don't have a vote, folks, in this phony criminal system that makes up the Electoral College and all these delegates and superdelegates and all this bullshit, they can throw the nomination to anyone they want. They can take it away and slide that rug underneath Donald Trump's feet. He'll fall back. His toupee will fall off. He'll start crying like a little... I'm just joking. I think actually Donald Trump's a little bit tougher than that. So that's where I think the real conspiracy is. And I think the GOP is playing with that idea. We've got big money, the movers and shakers behind this, playing with this idea. It's why they put it out into the media sphere, again, into the consciousness. This is a test model, putting it out there that maybe Paul Ryan might be a potential candidate to replace Trump, or Mitt Romney might be a potential candidate to replace Trump. But here's the problem. None of those candidates, even if the GOP successfully pulls this bullshit off, a criminal act, really, because the people have spoken. I mean, Trump at this point has a majority rule. Ted Cruz is way, way far behind. I don't think that the candidate that they would use to replace him would stand a shot in hell of actually winning against Hillary Clinton in 2016. So the GOP party would just be shooting itself in its own foot, maybe arguably the face, because Donald Trump is the only candidate, I think, who even has a shot in the dark or a shot in hell of actually taking Hillary Rodham Clinton out, who he said the other day is an embarrassment. He's absolutely right. Who he's also said is a criminal, who he said he would press charges again, investigate, prosecute, et cetera, all things that need to be done. Again, people have gone to jail for far lesser crimes than that. Hillary Clinton gets away with all this stuff, burning her email servers, the deaths of Christopher Stevens, several other Americans, Benghazi Gate. I mean, the list goes on and on. Even her husband, a scumbag. You know the history.
There's no question that people are watching. There's no question that there's a lot of energy, certain on the GOP side when we see the voting, but there is pushback, not only in your own party, but there is an idea that your divisiveness, what you're bringing out in terms of the anger of the country, is also motivating the base on Clinton's side. She spoke to it last night, and I want to get your reaction to what she said. Here's Hillary Clinton, and we can both safely say she's talking about you.
Our commander-in-chief has to be able to defend our country, not embarrass it. Engage our allies, not alienate them. Defeat our adversaries, not embolden them. When we hear a candidate for president call for rounding up 12 million immigrants, banning all Muslims from entering the United States, when he embraces torture, that doesn't make him strong. It makes him wrong.
Your response?
Well, I think she's an embarrassment to our country. She's under federal investigation. She doesn't have the strength or the stamina to be president, frankly, as far as I'm concerned. She doesn't have strength. She doesn't have the stamina. I think she would, she talks about defeat our enemies. Well, where has she been for the last year? We can't even beat ISIS. She's not defeating our enemies. She wouldn't know how to defeat the enemies. It's ridiculous.
Trump's the only person that has a real shot. So I think, as I've spoken about already profusely, I think Donald Trump actually gets the nomination, even though the GOP party is floating the idea, and it's a possibility. They could pull the rug underneath him even beforehand if he's short the delegate count, which is why I think Donald Trump really needs to push hard right now. I mean, he's got to go bonkers. Okay, his campaign's got to be on alert. I mean, they got to strike when the iron's hot. Donald Trump needs to make sure he gets that majority delegate count, because it will breed less of an argument and give the GOP establishment less of an argument to kick him in the ass to the curb. Now, I talked about this. Donald Trump's talked about it. I think there'd be riots if things don't work out for the Donald, because, again, the people have spoken. If he falls short and the GOP party kicks him out, I think there would be absolute social chaos. Who knows? Maybe that's the intention. Maybe that's what the political elites want. Social chaos is power. Social chaos is control. Why do you think George Soros and his organizations like MoveOn.org, these NGOs, why do you think they finance these types of protests? Why do you think Hillary Clinton helps to launch and cascade these types of events that are anti-Trump and anti-Bernie Sanders? Because social chaos is power. It's a tool of the elites. That's why there's this massive movement, and there's even more aggressive protest planned in the not-too-distant future leading up to the GOP convention, I believe, in July, which I think is also taking place in Ohio. Massive protests, civil unrest, and disobedience planned, which has already resulted in absolute disrespectable violence in places like Chicago, where Trump had to cancel his campaign because, again, social chaos is a means to an end. It's a measurement of control. So Donald Trump really has to strike when the iron is hot right now. Also, I think he's got to be careful in an upcoming debate with Hillary Rodham Clinton. I think he needs to be aggressive. I think he needs to go for the jugular. I think he needs to be firm. And he's very unpredictable, so Hillary Clinton really can't prepare for Donald Trump, which I think is awesome. I think he'll destroy her. I think he'll probably metaphorically murder her on stage, going head-to-head. But he also has to be careful not to position himself in too much of an angered manner, because I think that she'll probably play, and her political operatives will advise her to play the weak woman card, that she's just a woman being attacked by this animal face of Donald Trump. I mean, after all, Hillary Clinton has a vagina, and Donald Trump has a dick. How dare he? That misogynist asshole! That's exactly how they're going to play it. That's how actually I would advise her, too, if I was working for a camp. Play the woman card. Play the vagina card. And try to egg Trump on where he gets too aggressive, crosses the line, so she can almost break down in tears, and the nation can break down in tears. All the progressive leftist radicals can be like, look, we can't have a tyrant like Donald Trump elected the President of the United States of America. So that's the card that they're going to play. And Donald Trump has to be careful. I don't think Donald Trump's a plant. I don't think he's working for the Clintons. Actions speak louder than words. Nothing that I've seen thus far would indicate that at all. Hillary's a plant. Hillary's working for the man. Hillary's working for the New World Order, political, corporate, media, religious establishment. She's the whore. Okay, she's the political whore, not Donald Trump. Donald Trump, a media whore, I'll give him that. Kind of an asshole, an egomaniacal prick. Yeah, I've said that from the get-go. It's also what makes him perfect for President of the United States. His strength. And he's real. And he's dangerous. The GOP party is floating the idea now, putting out...
I'm going to stop it there. AMTV Christopher Green. Go check him out on YouTube. Subscribe. Now, again, I say that's exactly why Trump would be a bad candidate and a great dictator. That's the problem. You want someone that makes the country strong, not the government and the military. And when I say that, people are like, you don't want the military to be... I want the people to be strong. When there's a need to defend this country, the people are strong enough to have a strong army. And then that's where people have to make those decisions if they're going to be a part of something. You know, our real army was supposed to be made up of state militias. Now we call that the National Guard. But that's what it was. Our standing army was only supposed to be when the state militias agreed to go to war. So when we look at the army and the military we have now, the president is able to dictate all that because, well, he doesn't need the consent from the states anymore. And even though it might have not been portrayed that way when they started manipulating the system, it was manipulated with the intention of one day becoming what it has. and it is a military industrial complex, which is now birthing the spawn of the police state that is every day increasing to the point that we might have a terrorist around again. Look what's going on. You know, we need cameras on every corner. We need to watch everything. Okay, basically the same things you're doing over in those people's country that are pissing them off. Kind of like the no-knock raids, looking for things that are illegal over there in their country. Well, if you have guns, you're probably part of the terrorist group, so you can't defend your home. Over here, it's whatever they can, charge you with something. No knock raid wrong homes. Sure that happens. And, that's not blaming the individual, military people that are trying to, protect the country. Some of them are just trying to get paid and get maybe college education, which what you end up finding out when you get out of the military is they don't take that well care of you. Might not notice it right at the beginning, but I could introduce you to plenty of vets that aren't well taken care of. And we look at the system. You put Donald Trump in, I think we're just looking at war beyond what we're even seeing right now. And it will be a civil war and a world war. And I think we're going to see two transformations of America that are really going to have us in limbo for a while. Hopefully I'm wrong. Hopefully we can maybe start going towards freedom. Maybe that could be one of the transformations, but the way the society's acting right now, I don't have high hopes. And I'm trying to figure out, where were all these people that we had back in 07, 08? I know where some of them are, and they're just completely out of the system, but are we not in a state of peril that, do you trust society to fill any type of a vacuum that could be created by, civil unrest? Or are we actually expecting to see a divided country or two countries come out of all this? There's so many questions out there when you're looking at the landscape and society right now and the turmoil. And it's literally history repeating itself. And so many people are being manipulated, definitely by our institutions. And it's really sad. It really is. But I do know a lot of people that are well informed, and it's gets to the point that you want to see more of these people become, household names. You want to see Rothbard become a household name. You want to see Hayek. It's to the point that we have to start sharing this information that contradicts and proves wrong these socialist and these authoritarian ideas. Because right now, no one's talking about those, the left or the right. And I think through this election, we could see a lot of things go wrong. Now I have one here from We Are Change. Is Donald Trump for real?
Results are in from last night's Super Tuesday with Hillary Rodham Clinton and Donald Trump dominating the night, leading many experts to say that this 2016 presidential race will be between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump facing off against each other to be president of the United States. But in this video, I wanted to talk about Donald Trump. Is he a man of the people who will bring significant change to this country and go against the status quo, go up against the establishment and make a significant difference in this country? Or is he just another authoritarian dictator vying for more power and control for himself selfishly? Now, many people have been for Donald Trump, mainly because the people who are against him are deplorable. If you look at the people waging war against Donald Trump, it is bankers, it is members of the Council on Foreign Relations, it is neoconservatives, it is the Bush crime family and Barack Obama who are going up against Donald Trump. Even globalist insider Larry Summers said that Trump is a serious threat to American democracy. But if you look at Larry Summers, the man who got rid of Glass-Steagall, the man who helped engineer the 2008 financial crisis, this man does not give a damn about you, and he is primarily responsible for the banker takeover of this country that we are all suffering from still. This man does not give a damn about you. But let's look at Trump's stance. Trump is totally against neoconservative ideology. He denounced the war in Iraq. He wants to remain neutral on the Israeli-Palestine conflict. He is saying intrinsic truths. He doesn't want to get bogged down inside of Syria. He wants to sit back, let the situation unfold, and not have more military conflicts, more war with United States and the world. He is saying really complex truths, like the fact that Saddam Hussein and Muammar Gaddafi, if they were still in power, the Middle East and the world would be a lot better off. And this is completely true. It was the neoconservative doctrine who got rid of these dictators in the Middle East. And because of that, because of this vacuum of power, because of the United States sending money and weapons to rebels, we have financed our very own worst enemy, ISIS. And Trump is the only presidential candidate who is in favor of Vladimir Putin, who is in favor of Russia bombing and getting rid of ISIS. Our government, who claims their main objective is to get rid of ISIS, is not for this. But Trump is the only presidential candidate who's saying it's great that Russia is destroying ISIS. This was supposed to be our goal. Let them do it. He wants to cut military spending, and because of that, all the neoconservatives are shaking in their boots because their main money supply, the military-industrial complex, is threatened by Donald J. Trump. He also came out and said that he wants the 28 pages declassified from the 9/11 investigation. This is an extremely important document that has been classified by George W. Bush and by Barack Obama, kept classified by him, and it shows a direct link with Saudi Arabia having a direct involvement in the 9/11 attacks. Donald Trump went on national television and said that George Bush knew about 9/11. He let 9/11 happen. Huge, complex truths exposed to the American public that were viewed as unpopular. He is getting that important information out there to the people. He also stands behind auditing our quasi-private Federal Reserve banking system. He wants more accountability. He wants more transparency. One of the few candidates running now who is willing to make this hugely important stance to get our dollar, to get our economic system right with full transparency, with full truth, going up against the banksters who have been looting and colluding and lying and manipulating our economic system for their very own benefit. Donald Trump wants some transparency in this region, and that's why many libertarians, many people on the outside, many people even in the alternative media have been supporting Donald J. Trump. Now, let me take you on a different version of Donald J. Trump and show you some of the controversial issues he has been involved in that prove that he is just an authoritarian dictator. Donald Trump has publicly said that he wants to open up libel laws. He says he will do this in order to make it easier for for people to sue reporters, utterly destroying the First Amendment, bogging down our freedom of expression for selfish reasons, making sure that our Bill of Rights, that our way, our First Amendment, our most important right will be bogged down in court. This is an extremely selfish, authoritarian move by Donald J. Trump. He also wants to boycott Apple because Apple refused to unlock its phone to the FBI, and he is standing in the FBI's corner on this very important argument that's happening right now. And even Congress is telling the FBI it cannot do this. The FBI has made many, many mistakes when it comes to this case, and they want more power, they want more control, they want more access to your private information, they want a backdoor, and Donald Trump is for that. He is with Marco Rubio and Ted Cruz when it comes to spying on you and the NSA surveillance. He wants to reauthorize the Patriot Act. He wants the NSA to collect private information on you. And when you look at the NSA spying program, this is a program that has been abused. This is a program that destroys your right to privacy. This is a program that has not been used to stop terrorism, as the government claims. This has been a program used to get more power and control for the government, and Donald Trump is in favor of supposed more security, more spying, more destruction of your civil liberties. And of course, when the NSA, they primarily want godlike powers, knowing everything you are doing. They want to collect all the information, and even many experts on the inside say this is an extremely corrupted program that's being abused by the people in power. When it comes to torture, Donald Trump is for waterboarding, and he says if it doesn't work, they deserved it anyway, which is an extremely inhumane stance, an extremely slippery slope that violates international human rights. A lot of people who have been caught up in the U.S. government's torture program have been found innocent, and those people's lives were ruined. When we become our very worst enemy, when we torture people, torture is ineffective anyway. Everyone knows this. Everyone in the military knows that the threat of torture works, but actual torture leaves people to say anything and to false confessions. Everyone knows this, but for some reason, Donald Trump is in favor of waterboarding, is in favor of torturing people. Now, the people behind RonPaul.com and many other libertarians are endorsing Donald Trump for the previous important facts and stances that I mentioned before. But Ron Paul himself is saying that Donald Trump is just another authoritarian, which brings to this large paradox that many people find themselves in. Do we support Donald Trump? Do we not support Donald Trump? And I hope in this video I was able to show you the two competing sides that prove both sides are right on this important issue. It's also important to know how our electoral system works. With the delegates, with the way the system is set up, it is set up to be rigged by the establishment. We're seeing that with what's happening in the Democratic side of the elections, with Bernie Sanders sometimes virtually tying Hillary Clinton, but Hillary Clinton still having a significant lead with the establishment because of delegates and superdelegates that she has behind her, obviously screwing over Bernie Sanders in the system. Now, many people in the establishment are saying that there should be a similar ploy to get rid of Donald Trump, and they could do that because we know the whole electoral system is rigged. You don't even vote for the president. The Electoral College votes for the president, but there's people in the establishment who are saying that all these candidates should be in against Donald Trump, and if they get 372 delegates with all the other candidates, they could have a brokered convention against Donald Trump's 316 delegates, and they could rally behind one person and get rid of all the victories that Donald Trump is having now. The establishment is now talking about potentially cheating Donald Trump out of this election because he is such a threat to them. But the game is rigged. If you look, even within the DNC, we have ex-DNC officials saying that they are warning to break away from Clinton. Clinton, the game is rigged in her favor. Mainstream media does not bring up her controversy. Social media, like Twitter, block hashtags that criticize her. All the power establishment elites, including the neoconservatives, are switching towards Hillary Rodham Clinton. The game is rigged. The Electoral College decides it anyway. And even if that doesn't matter, they have electronic voting fraud, which you could see this very critically important video in the description below, detailing just how elections could be rigged by the very establishment, which leads me to the greater fact, does voting even matter? And the question to you, are you for Donald Trump? Do you see him as a man of the people, or do you see him as an authoritarian? Let me know in the comment section below. This is an extremely divisive issue. This is an extremely complex issue. But hopefully in this video, we brought you some clarification on just the man he is, about how they rigged the elections, and how the establishment is pretty much deciding who will be the next president of the United States. What will happen with Trump? Will there be a brokered convention? Is he a part of the establishment? Is he against the establishment? Is he just playing coy? Is he just making false promises? Let me know in the comment section below, because this is an extremely complex issue to get to, and we can only do that with proper communication and discussing this issue together. Thank you again so much for watching. Thank you again so much.
Luke Radowski, We Are Change. We Are Change.org. We Are Change on YouTube. Subscribe. Now, if we look at both sides that he pointed out, we do have someone that is talking a lot of what is going on, and things like audit the Fed, releasing, the classified papers. But on the other hand, he is blatantly talked about ending the First Amendment, blatantly talked about taking people's rights away. And you wonder why people might compare him to Hitler. Yeah, make the place better for the Germans that I agree with, not the Jewish Germans. Well, it's one of those things that you have to go. Well, if you're willing to go that far, that means you have to put laws in place that target someone. And not specifically because they've done something wrong. Those laws will bite you in the butt, even if you're on the winning side at the time. Now, he could be pandering to people, but what side's pandering? When is he talking truth and when is he pandering? These are the problems. This was one of the problems with Rand Paul. Problems why he couldn't get that support that his dad got. He was pandering to certain people. Now it's one thing when he was going, the drug war. That's something that his ideology would say that even though he don't agree with it, the drug war is still wrong. He might not agree with the drugs, but he doesn't agree with the drug war either. And the unfair sentencings, and it's one of those things that wasn't pandering because it's something that he truly believed in. Now, there were other things that he would pander on. And even in that, he would go, but we need to not put him in jail, but we need to intervene, basically. Treatment, not criminal. If you're still talking about forcing someone because your belief in what they do is wrong, some people believe vaccines are poison. I personally don't trust them. I wouldn't say that all vaccines are poison, but I don't trust them. I think they are not in my best interest. Now, there's a lot of things that are double-edged swords too, and I think vaccines can be that. And right now, Donald Trump's coming off as one of those double-edged swords. But I think that it does play into pandering. And when you have people that pander, they lose support of the people that have true beliefs in something, not people that are emotionally motivated. And I think that's what happened to Rand Paul. I think that's why you see some of the more philosophical, libertarian people out there going, yeah, I would never vote for Trump. And, you know, I've said that I would not vote. I don't see anyone worth voting for. I kind of play the George Carlin when it comes to voting. So it's one of those things that, though, we do have to pay attention. And I think that the only even close to decent choice that was ever in the field was Rand Paul, meaning I still didn't trust him. I don't trust really any candidates, but I think if anybody would have made a true positive change, it probably would have been him out of all of them. But it's all a game when it comes down to it because, again, the shadow government, you know, gray state, it's one of those things that it's very, very powerful. And even when maybe the president doesn't want something, that gray state can force it, you know, that president's hand by engaging in shadowy things that, again, will force their hand. And really, all we can really do right now, I think, is what a lot of the original Ron Paul supporters have started to do. And it's just trying to live your life as free as possible in the circumstances that we are currently in. Some people go off the grid. Some people leave the country. Some people just go about life knowing everything that's going on, being aware, but just still trying to go about life normally. I think I kind of play into that one. Because even though I know there is just turmoil and, you know, it's almost like you're waiting for that straw to break the camel's back, but you have to go on day by day because you can speak, but you can't force the hands of others. It never works. And when people allow themselves to become, you know, the tools of people that want to gain power and wealth and secure their vitality while putting everybody at risk, then you are helping create that situation. And since you can't force someone's hand, you basically have to try to live your life, you know, as peacefully and as free as possible. But again, eventually there will be that straw that breaks the camel's back. And that's what I think they're trying to force. And what comes out of that is probably pre-planned by them. Okay. Give me a second here. I have one last one. This one's a little bit longer. Actually, it doesn't want to load, so I'm going to try to get this browser reloaded. I don't think I'm going to go ahead and play that one just because it's already 7:10. Okay, I'm getting this browser back up here. Okay. Since we're already a little over halfway through the broadcast, I'm not going to play the long clip. But I did have a reality check talk about the super delegates and how they include registered lobbyists. Oh, how convenient. So, let's go ahead and get into this reality check. Truthandmedia.com, Ben Swan reality check on CBS 46.
A week ago, I told you about the Democratic Party's superdelegate problem, and that problem may be worse than we first thought. Could registered lobbyists have a bigger vote in the process than you do? This is a reality check you won't see anywhere else.
Well, I'll tell you, this is another Super Tuesday for our campaign. We know we will add to our delegate lead to roughly 300 with over 2 million more votes nationwide.
Well, Hillary Clinton continues to hold a delegate lead in her race for the Democratic nomination against Bernie Sanders. Now, after Super Tuesday 3, the pledged delegates, they look like this. With Clinton at 1,139, Sanders has 825. Again, those are pledged delegates. But as I've shown you, when you add in the super delegates to the mix, the numbers change dramatically. Clinton, in this case, now has 1,606 delegates. Sanders only 851. There are a total of 717 superdelegates. They make up roughly 1/3 of all the 2,383 delegates needed to win the Democratic nomination. Now, superdelegates are not bound by the will of any voters. They vote according to their own personal preference. The idea is to protect the party from grassroots activists. And if you don't believe that, then listen to what the DNC chair, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, told CNN's Jake Tapper about superdelegates, also called unpledged delegates.
Unpledged delegates exist really to make sure that party leaders and elected officials don't have to be in a position where they are running against grassroots activists.
So again, there are 717 superdelegates in total, like Democratic governors, members of Congress, and well-connected Democratic state legislators. Now get this. 463 of those superdelegates, they are not former or current elected officials. In fact, many of them are party insiders who have spent years working for the party and making large donations. But it turns out that an analysis by ABC News found that 67 of those superdelegates, nearly 10%, are actually former or current lobbyists. And get this, 41 lobbyist superdelegates, almost 6 in 10 of all the lobbyist superdelegates, have already committed to supporting Clinton. A third haven't yet revealed a preference, and 2 have stated that they are supporting Bernie Sanders. So what you need to know is that the Democratic Party is trying to play down the lobbyist influence, saying that 85% of all delegates are selected by the will of the voters. But candidly, that's not the point. The real question is this: why allow even one lobbyist to have a say? Because the truth is, politics is dirty. Politics is about money and power and influence. But another truth, today is a new day, and new generations of voters, they're fed up with the same old politics. They want to remake politics in America. And clearly, that means remaking our current party system. That's Reality Check. Let's talk about that tonight on Twitter.
TruthOfMedia.com, Ben Swan, Reality Check. We've known about the superdelegates. We've known about how both parties play the delegate process to really root out the chance of grassroots movement, even though Ron Paul made a extremely ground-moving movement in 2 elections. Their system was set up so that he could not get it. And when they have any doubt, any whisper of maybe a decent amount might turn out for that grassroots, they can always just change the rules. Look what happened last time Ron Paul ran. During the Republican National Convention, there's video out of it going across the teleprompter about the vote before it was finished. The yeas have it. So we know that they will prevent people they don't want from becoming the candidate. I think with Donald Trump, though, I think they're having a problem because he is a showboat. He is, widely watched. As for Ron Paul, he was watched by the opponents and he was watched by the supporters. He wasn't watched by the other party. He wasn't talked about from the other, side. The other side didn't acknowledge him. So it was one of those things that it's 2 different circumstances, and it's really hard to even comprehend where this could go. And I think that's also where the establishment is caught up in going, we just don't know what we should do. Do we stop him from becoming the nominee? I wouldn't be surprised if the establishment might secretly back the Democratic side. Possibility. Completely tarnish Trump in some way and back the opposition. A lot of the big establishment already do that type of dirty deeds. Now, I want to get into some other news. This out of the Libertarian Republic. We're just kind of going off course right now. Supreme Court rejects state's challenge to Colorado marijuana law. The U.S. Supreme Court refused Monday to take up lawsuit launched by Nebraska and Oklahoma trying to strike down Colorado's legalization of recreational marijuana. Justices voted 6-2 to block the lawsuit from reaching the nation's highest court. Nebraska and Oklahoma attorneys general have complained that Colorado's legalization of the drug has caused marijuana to uncontrollably pour into their states, prompting a massive drain on law enforcement resources. Attorneys from the two states also argued that Colorado's legislation violates the Controlled Substance Act. Colorado, in turn, responded that a state cannot violate the rights of another state merely for embracing a policy with which its neighbors disagree. The Obama administration has repeatedly declined to crack down on Colorado for legalizing marijuana at the state level and went a step further by pressuring the Supreme Court not to hear this case. Solicitor General Donald Borelli Jr. filed a brief in December arguing the complaint presented by the two states against Colorado does not fit within the purview of the court's original jurisdiction. There's no question about it. This is good news for legalization supporters. Tom Engel, chairman of the marijuana majority, told the Daily Caller News Foundation this case, if it went forward and the court ruled the wrong way, had the potential to roll back many of the gains our movement has achieved to date. But the justices correctly decided that this lawsuit is without merit and that the state should be able to move forward with implementing voter-approved legalization laws, even if their neighbors don't like it, Engel added. Justices Clarence Thomas and Samuel Alito Jr. provided the dissenting opinion, arguing that the Constitution mandates the court hear all disputes between states. The plaintiff states have alleged significant harms to their sovereign interests caused by another state, Thomas wrote. According to the Washington Times, whatever the merit of the plaintiff states' claims, we should let this complaint proceed further rather than denying leave without so much as a word of explanation. I think that it's not Colorado. I think it's those states' own laws that put the strain on their law enforcement. Checkmate. Then I have a First Amendment victory. This comes, this was originally from the Rutherford Institute on the Front Lines. First Amendment victory. San Francisco settles lawsuit over activists' right to peacefully display sign in Willie Mays Plaza in front of Giants Ballpark. A settlement has been reached in a First Amendment lawsuit filed by the Rutherford Institute against police officers who allegedly intimidated and threatened to arrest a man who was lawfully and peacefully exercising his First Amendment rights in the Willie Mays Plaza prior to a Giants versus Dodgers game by holding up a John 3:16 religious sign in the public plaza in front of the San Francisco Giants ballpark. The lawsuit filed in the U.S. District Court for the Northern District of California on behalf of Gino Emmerich alleged that police officers violated Emmerich's right to free speech and assembly when they forcefully removed him from Willie Mays Plaza, surrounded him, and threatened him to arrest if he did not cease displaying his John 3:16 sign. Under the settlement agreement, the city and county of San Francisco have agreed to conduct an investigation about the status of Willie Mays Plaza in connection with the rights of citizens to exercise their First Amendment rights there. Much of what used to be great about America, especially as it pertains to our love of freedom and our commitment to First Amendment activities, has been overshadowed by a greater desire for security and an inclination towards political correctness, said constitutional attorney John W. Whitehead, president of Rutherford Institute and author of Battlefield America, The War on the American People, which is a book that I've read, and is an incredible book. I urge people to check it out. It is on the front page, the homepage of Anti-Tyranny.news.com on the right-hand side. Buy it through that link, and it helps Anti-Tyranny.news.com out. That this incident, with its police intimidation tactics over discrimination and censorship, took place in a public plaza dedicated to Willie Mays, a legendary baseball player who lived through an era of police tactics, discrimination, and censorship, is a powerful indictment of all that is wrong with America today. According to the complaint filed in the action on Sunday, July 27, 2014, prior to the start of a Giants versus Dodgers baseball game, Gino Emmerich arrived at Willie Mays Plaza carrying a John 3:16 sign, a religious reference to a central tenet of Christianity. Other people were in the plaza, some displaying signs and otherwise communicating messages. Also in the plaza was a makeshift broadcast booth put together for a live broadcast and discussion of the Giants versus Dodgers game for ESPN Sports Center. As Emmerich neared the broadcast booth, he was approached by one of the show's producers and four uninformed San Francisco police officers. Emmerich was allegedly warned by the producer that if he showed his sign, he would be arrested based upon the fact that he was known to the producer as one who displays religious signage. After the producer walked away, Emmerich stationed himself in view of the camera behind the commentators and held up his John 3:16 sign. While Emmerich was holding up his sign, a police officer grabbed him from behind by his shirt neck and moved him out of the view of the camera. Once Emmerich was clear of the cameras, he was surrounded by 4 police officers and one. If you go over there and you hold that sign again, we will arrest you, and the sergeant will come over here and decide where we are going to take you. Emmerich then left the plaza as to avoid the possibility of arrest and turned to the Rutherford Institute for help. And I always urge people to go check out Rutherford.org, Rutherford Institute. Okay, move on here to the next article. Now, this is something that we've been talking about, been in the news. I've played statements from John McAfee all over the iPhone, and the FBI claiming they want Apple to build this back door and that they don't need it to get into that phone. Well, truthandmedia.com FBI claims as found outside party to break into iPhone in San Bernardino case. Well, McAfee's been offering his help on national TV. The night before, Apple Inc. and the FBI were set to face off in court over whether Apple should be forced to create software to override the iPhone's encryption. The FBI requested that the hearing be canceled. How convenient. Maybe they didn't want a case that might end up setting precedent so they can try these tactics later down the road. But it says here the court hearing set for Tuesday was over the case of the iPhone used by Syed Farouk, a suspect in the San Bernardino shooting in December, after claiming that the only way to access the data on Farouk's iPhone was for Apple to create software to break the iPhone's encryption. The FBI stated Monday night that the agency may have found another method to hack the phone. In a court filing, the FBI asked U.S. Magistrate Judge Sherry Peem to vacate the hearing, claiming that on Sunday an outside party demonstrated to the FBI a possible method for unlocking Farouk's iPhone. Testing is required to determine whether it is a viable method that will not compromise data on Farouk's iPhone. If the method is viable, it should eliminate the need for the assistance from Apple Inc. set forth in the All Writs Act order in this case. The filing did not name the outside party, but proposed that to make time for testing to determine whether this is a viable method, the government should have until April 5th to submit a status report. Judge Prim granted the FBI's request around 9:30 p.m. Eastern Monday. She sided with the agency in February, ruling that the All Writs Act of 1789 justified the government's forcing Apple to create the software to decrypt the iPhone in order to access information on the phone used by Farouk. In contrast, Brooklyn Magistrate Judge James Ornstein ruled on March 1st that the government cannot use the All Writs Act to force Apple to provide data from a locked iPhone in the case of a suspect facing criminal drug charges in New York. Ornstein wrote the implications of the government's position are so far-reaching, both in terms of what it would allow today and what it implies about congressional intent in 1789 as to produce permissible, absurd results, including the cases of the San Bernardino shooting suspect in California and the criminal drug suspect in New York. Apple is facing a total of 12 cases in which the FBI is pushing for the company's help to gain access to encrypted data. Fred Kate, a law professor at Indiana University, told Ars Technica that while the FBI's request to vacate the hearing could be good news for Apple, it is not the end of an escalating security struggle. As a practical matter, if the FBI's new technique works, it likely means that Apple will add more protection to its devices, which is a good thing for consumers, and the FBI will be back in court in the future asking a judge to compel Apple to help the government defeat Apple's improved security, Kate said. So the issue probably has been deferred, not resolved. Kind of like what I was saying at the beginning. Vacate this, that way they can push it again at a later date when they might have a better chance. I've seen another one here, truthandmedia.com. Let me see if I can find it. Now, we've talked about this before, that training that they were doing for Syrian rebels. And how, well, basically, the results were catastrophic. It just absolutely will not work. Truthandmedia.com, this was posted the 21st. Pentagon set to renew training of Syrian rebels. Yeah, you heard it. The Obama administration has reportedly approved the Pentagon's request to once again arm and train Syrian rebels, albeit on a smaller scale than a previous effort that had a price tag of $500 million and effectively trained far less rebels than originally estimated. There is currently limited information available regarding details of the new program, other than statements that the program is confirmed to be relaunched. The Los Angeles Times reported that Colonel Steve Warren, spokesman for the U.S. military operation to defeat ISIS, known as Operation Inherent Resolve, has yet to declare how many fighters will be trained or when the program will begin. Warren reportedly noted that the new program will be a smaller operation, acknowledging that this is part of our adjustments to the train and equip program built on prior lessons learned. After reports surfaced in September 2015 that the Pentagon was suspending its train and equip program for Syrian rebels, the program officially ended in October 2015, largely due to its ineffectiveness. Trainees in the first group of the program are reported to have largely disbanded soon after they were sent into combat. Some were captured or killed, while others fled. And training of another group yielded only a small number of new fighters, drawing criticism from U.S. lawmakers who condemned the program as a joke and a failure. The program, or the original program's cost, reached $384 million and produced only 145 trained fighters, which was far less than the 5,400 fighters that the program had originally hoped to train. In early March, U.S. Central Command CENTCOM Commander Army General Lloyd Austin asked the Obama administration for approval to restart the effort by using a different approach, according to The Hill. Ben Swan released a Truth and Media episode embedded below that explored the central issue of whether or not ISIS was created by inaction by the United States government or by direct action, including the U.S. government in sending weapons to Syrian rebels. According to the Department of Defense, the most recent estimated cost of operations related to ISIL since kinetic operations started on August 8, 2014, is $6.5 billion, and the average daily cost is $11.4 million for 571 days of operations. And they want more money. They always want more money. Okay, give me a second here. Seen an article on FEE.org, Foundation for Economic Education. I want to try to find that again. Okay. Let me see if I have it here. Okay. Now, this is something that I've talked about pretty deeply, and it's college. Now, well, a large number of people are going to college. Sad thing is, I don't see a lot of people coming out of college with what it takes to work. And you would think, they go to college. They have to, do their work. And well, it's just so easy to get a degree unless you go to a major college, which money, the limited access to those colleges, the eliteness of those colleges. Unless you get in one of those, the rest of colleges are kind of just all the same. Now you have your internet degrees, and you have too many people going to college with only so many positions to fill. Now they're left with debt. Again, this is from FEE.org. Barely half of student loans are being repaid. Defaults are up again. The U.S. Department of Education's new data on the status of outstanding student loans show that outright defaults are up. However, their press release and much of the accompanying media coverage instead played up a decline in loan delinquencies. The increase in defaults is worrisome and needs to be addressed by Congress. The total amount of outstanding direct student loans stood at $855 billion at the beginning of the first quarter of 2016, distributed among over 30 million recipients. This total does not include loans still outstanding under the now discontinued FFEL program, which guaranteed private sector student loans. The total direct loan amount outstanding is up roughly 15% over a year ago. Doubtlessly the result of relentless tuition increases. Excluding student loans owed by borrowers currently in school or in their 6-month grace period, 46% of student loans are now currently being repaid. 10% of student loans are delinquent, meaning the borrower has missed payments for 30 days or more. Another 13% are in deferment, which means payments have been postponed for various reasons. Another 14% are in forbearance, meaning the borrower has encountered economic hardship and their payments suspended or reduced. The remaining 8% are in default. 54% of loans are currently in repayment, up slightly from 51% at the same point in 2015. Now, these statistics do not mean that taxpayers will need to pick up the tab for 46% of the outstanding student loan balance, but they do raise a red flag that taxpayers should be on the hook for a lot of money if these loans are not repaid in full. Moreover, high delinquency and default rates will hurt the ability of students to gain access to credit in the future, slowing the economy. Unfortunately, the trend seems to be moving in the wrong direction. While delinquency rates dropped, overall loan non-performance increased, most notably student loans in default, defined here as loans more than 360 days delinquent, increased 31% in the past year to $56 billion. This far outpaced the 20% increase in the outstanding balance for all borrowers not in school or a grace period. Extreme non-performance student loans is growing troublingly common. A strong predictor of student loan delinquency or default is whether the student has actually graduated from college, since students who drop out face limited employment prospects, even the ones that do graduate. Graduation rates at 60% have plenty of room for improvement. There are some other notable data points from the Education Department release. Parent Plus loans, an effectively unlimited stream of funds for taxpayers to finance undergraduate degrees, are up 9% to $71 billion, while outpacing the 6% increase in regular Stafford loans. Recipients of Parent Plus loans are up 6% to 3.5 million individuals, continuing a worrying trend that will likely result in ever higher tuition inflation. I have previously argued that the PLUS program should be eliminated before it gets too large. Total taxpayer exposure, including government guarantees of private loans, is up to $1.2 trillion. This is larger than outstanding auto loans, $1.1 trillion, and credit card debt at $0.7 trillion. The student loan balance is also growing faster than most other types of debt. Credit card debt has grown 4.3% over the previous year, while housing debt has grown just 0.1%. Of the major debt types, only auto debt grew quicker than student loans at a rate of 12%. As time goes on, Congress will find it increasingly difficult to ignore student loans. Eliminating or at least capping the PLUS loan program would be a good start for reform. However, eventually, more fundamental changes, including partial privatization, will be necessary. The longer Congress waits to act, the more difficult the transition will be. And, you know, we've talked about this, that the more that government subsidizes college, the higher the price goes. The easier they make it for people, because, well, now it's the government that's helping people get into college. They have to be equal to everyone. Therefore, now we have everyone going to college. A lot of people that aren't ready for college. And we wonder why this is happening. When you have a pretty decent number of people going to college, remember, not all those people that go to college and not all those people that graduated were that good. Not everybody can be at the top of the class. And that's just the people that graduated. Then the people that went maybe still in because they haven't graduated yet. Ones that dropped out. We're going to hit a wall eventually, and I think it's coming faster than we realize. And when you play all this into the political scene right now, the debt, the emotions, no trust, I think we're in a way kind of lucky we haven't seen more turmoil than we are seeing right now. Because I think that possibility is there. People are getting to that point where I don't believe they're all thinking. They're emotionally driven. They're not, actually critically thinking what they're doing. And that can lead to a lot of problems. And that's another thing with Trump. If he can allow the left to control the people and get the left riled up, they can start turmoil. And you see the left and how they act. They probably could do it probably better than the right. most of the heads in the Democratic side are out of a movement of making things happen, whatever's necessary. And that should scare people. You look at Hillary's past and how she, became who she is. Because she, from the beginning, wanted that power. I think with her, everything is a very, very self-involved motive. Okay, let me see if I can get to this last article here. Hopefully, find it quick. I have this article here out of liberty.me. And this was Randall Chester Saunders. And I found this to be kind of interesting read. Who can be free? It says here, Wendy McElroy has posted a comment from one of her readers on her blog concerning the impossibility of fixing government tyranny by passing more laws. On that point, the writer is correct. However, the comment ends with these words. It was a mistake to turn over our lives to a ruling class, even if some are temporary. It didn't work. Now we have to fix it. Not by asking their permission, working within their rules, but by denying them all power. They got it from us. We can take it back. Really, how? The rhetoric sounds so very good, but if one wants to be free, feel good, rhetoric is not going to help much. If one truly wants to be free, it can only be achieved by pursuing what is truly possible. The truth is the ruling class did not get their power from us. There is not a person born and living in the United States today that signed the Constitution, ever agreed to be a citizen of this country, or be bound by its laws and regulations such as being required to pay taxes, participate in its welfare programs, or forced to fight in its wars or finance them. A who exactly is the we? That we would take back the power if they could is certainly not most of the citizens of this country who do not mind taxes at all, especially more than half of those citizens being supported by them, and they certainly don't mind the welfare programs and are proud to fight in America's wars and feel good about it and believe it is anti-American to oppose them. The first thing the freedom lover must understand is that no matter who the we is, the way to freedom is not by taking power away from the political elite, because it cannot be done. I know that is hard truth to swallow, and no one has to believe it, and most won't. And everyone who refuses to understand it may continue their futile pursuit of freedom by political means. But to those who believe rhetoric like they got it from us and we can take it back, I say quit saying it and do it. Don't tell me what you can do, show me. Who can be free? Freedom is only for those who want it, and most people do not really want freedom. The one aspect of true freedom that most people are terrified of is that true freedom would require them to be totally responsible for their own lives. If truly free, their success or failure would depend solely on their own efforts and ability. The risks and dangers of the real world, as well as all those made up by politicians, journalists, religionists, and academics, terrify most people, and they want is security, safety, and guarantees. What they want is all the things a government promises them in exchange for their freedom. The individuals who truly want to be free, and the only individuals who can be free, are those who embrace the true risks and dangers of reality, knowing they are competent to deal with every challenge and able to overcome every barrier to achieve their own success and happiness in this world. Only those who want nothing in life they have not achieved or produced by their own effort, because their own sense of self-worth and integrity requires them to know that all they have and all they are, they have earned and achieved themselves, need freedom, and are capable of achieving it or able to enjoy it, who will be free. There is another reason why any political method toward freedom is wrong. H.L. Mencken express it in this way. I believe in only one thing, liberty, but I do not believe in liberty enough to want to force it upon anyone. Every scheme for establishing liberty is some supposed method of transforming an unfree society into what one believes a free society ought to be. Most people in most societies do not really want freedom, and making the society free means forcing freedom on those who don't really want it. I know some schemes involve some method of converting people by teaching or training or propaganda from security loving to freedom loving, which is totally unrealistic. No one can change people, at least not by any moral means. Giving everyone not wanting freedom a lobotomy would probably work. Only individuals can be free by their own choice and effort. One who found freedom. There is one phrase in the original quote at the beginning of this article I like. Not by asking their permission. Excuse me. There was once a man who used a similar phrase as the motto for his website. Take liberty, the motto is. Don't ask permission, just take it. The man was Richard Ribin. Richard Ribin was always an individualist and at one time quite influential in various freedom movements to establish his own freedom. He extricated himself from those movements. In pursuing my credits below, you will note various books and websites in the pursuit of liberty. These are a public venture is rather beside the point. And then you can go down on liberty.me, find that article. And the article is Who Can Be Free? Now, the whole thing about teaching, you can't force someone to learn, but you can give them the resources to seek it. And that does become a teaching. Because any way you look at teaching is not going into a classroom, spouting off a whole bunch of stuff and hoping people do the work and learn from you. Teaching is when you're able to get through to people and get them to actually self-examine and critically think things and look at information from all sides and decide for themselves what they want, what they believe, and what they should, strive for and seek in a society. Be the change you want to be. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. Don't forget to check out UCY.tv. Click the Amazon button down towards the bottom and shop Amazon. Same great prices, and UCY gets a little kickback. Thank you again.